Thank you, Madam Chair, and want to thank the witnesses here. You know, I just came from a EPW committee hearing on the issue of drinking water in America. Now we're talking about broadband. And what I want to do, I want to focus on this issue of the truly unserved communities, because when we talk about speeds and overbuilding and resiliency, and it's all important, but there are communities in America, in my state in particular, that, for example, in the previous hearing, don't have any running water. No flush toilets. American citizens. Thousands of them. So we talk about infrastructure for upgrading water and sewer infrastructure. My view is you got to start with the people who have nothing. And similarly with broadband, I think the truly unserved in my state, people just don't have it. It's not about upgrading speeds, it's not about resiliency. They have nothing. So the discussion here is really important. I know there's a lot of bipartisan focus on this, but I think before we talk about upgrading speeds and everything else, we have to get to the people who have nothing. And unfortunately, a lot of my constituents don't have anything. So Mr. Forte, Mr. O'Reilly, by the way, happy St. Patrick's Day. How do we get to that spot where we have all this money, but where we can focus our efforts on just making sure the most basic needs, anything, we hit that? Because we've been doing broadband for a long time, but there's still communities, whether in Alaska or I'm sure in certain other states, that have zero. And I think we have to prioritize these Americans first. Mr. O'Reilly, you want to?
I would absolutely agree with your statement, and it's what I spent my time at the commission focused on. How do you deal with those that have absolutely nothing? And I've sat in the kitchens of the families who had to lose their job was moving away, and they were allowed to telework if possible, and they had no broadband to be served. So they were basically unemployed because of it. And so I've done that, and I absolutely agree with you. What happens when you increase the speeds, and we've done it a couple of times. When I first got to the commission, we were at 4.1, and then when everyone wanted to go to 10.1, and then Tom Wheeler, the former chair, said we need to go to 25.3 because only that is table stakes. But in doing so, we ignored everybody who had nothing. And that's how the debate is going right now. How do we go to 100, or things that people don't necessarily need in most instances when people have a good portion of people, and we can debate how many people, whether it's 12 million, 20 million, whatever, we can debate that, but we know they have nothing. And a lot of people in Alaska have fallen that situation. And that's what I cared about. And I say hold off on the speeds and focus on those. And I go to Mr. Forte's point, stay focused on the unserved.
So thank you, and by the way, I thought you did a great job as commissioner, so wish you were still there. Mr. Forte, do you have a view on this? I know you care about it, but again, this shouldn't be a controversial topic. It should be, let's start with the people who have nothing. It's the same with drinking water, right? Like, I can't believe it. I have to go to hearings and pound the table and say, I have thousands of constituents. By the way, some of the most patriotic Americans in the country, because they all serve in the military, and they don't have flush toilets or drinking water. Broadband's kind of similar, becoming similar. Mr. Forte, what do you think? What can we do here? I don't think it's terribly controversial what I'm talking about, but as Mr. O'Reilly said, the conversation quickly goes to bumping up the speeds versus focused on the people who have nothing.
Absolutely. We couldn't agree more. We've seen in some of the federal programs, even when they've come out with a bidding round, there's been areas that have gone in our footprint that have really gone unbid, right? And those areas are the ones that still lack broadband. Hundreds of or billions and billions of dollars are awarded to other areas, and we go to work, building those areas. Well, other areas remain largely unbid in some of these auctions. Nobody's even bid on them. Another in particular instance, which was very disheartening, in one of the states we served, they upped the speed limits from 25.3 to 100/20. 100% of the applications went to areas that already had 25.3. So $11 million was awarded in federal funding to those areas. They didn't get one house closer to closing the digital divide in the entire state because of the upping of the speed threshold from 25.3 to 100/20. So that's just what happens when you change those thresholds. Providers will build in the areas that it's easier to build to, closer to the areas that they serve, they don't stretch out to reach those areas that truly don't have it. And that's what we're seeing, and why the digital divide is not being closed and still leaving that small gap that's out there.
Well, Madam Chair, I think it's an area for bipartisan cooperation. I'm sure Senator Tester would agree. But if we can work on this, because I don't think it's controversial, and maybe the witnesses, and I'm sorry I didn't get to ask Professor Ali and Mr. Wilkins questions, but if you have ideas or language that can help us with this, I think it's really important. And I don't think it's controversial. I think it's imperative.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Sullivan. I definitely believe in an Alaska plan. I think Alaska is so unique, it requires, you know, specificity to how we're going to achieve what we need to achieve. I know the FCC had something, I don't know how successful it was, but look forward to working and talking to you about that.
Thank you very much.